Hello and a very warm welcome to this service of worship from Kingswood Meeting House. Whether you're a virtual visitor or a regular attender, we're very glad to have you with us today. To begin, as ever, I kindle our chalice flame, the symbol of our Unitarian faith that unites us with Unitarians all around the world. And some words by Benjamin Downing. Friends, draw close, listen together, sing together, pray together, share the mysteries which never die and the silence which never cease. And as we share and celebrate and worship, one in all and all in each, may we feel and know that we are being understood better than we know and understand ourselves. May we give the winds our fears. May we give to the world our faith. May we give to life our thanks and our service. For evermore. Amen. And a few words from the Bible. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. When they heard that Jesus was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Afterwards, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. These returned and reported it to the rest, but they didn't believe them either. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. He said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." I hope you'll forgive me for going a little off the beaten path. I suspect you're probably getting used to it by now. But I was looking for another reading to use today when I stumbled across an article by something called Google Analytics. Now, the reason it made me stop and look is because I had a bad shoulder the other day. It's nothing serious and it's fine now, but if you're in pain and you don't moan about it, does it really count? As if by magic, without me even touching my phone, my iPad or my laptop, the next time I went to use them, I was flooded with adverts for a cure for shoulder pain. All very suspicious. And it seems as though our Googling habits have been tracked throughout this and the previous lockdowns. In the beginning, there was nothing very exciting. What time is Boris on? When are the shops quiet? How do I get a delivery slot? All top the list. Then perhaps predictably, we have lots of searches for furlough, probably because few of us knew what it actually meant. Espresso martini and whipped coffee appeared next, along with how to make McDonald's chicken nuggets. Now clearly the chicken McNuggets were too easy to make because shortly afterwards there was a big search for vegan and vegetarian recipes, but also Chloe Ting's 2-week shred and how to lose body fat. Church services then appeared as many of us tried to get to grips with technology and move to online worship. Joe Wicks and Mo Farah's 5K were popular searches, and along with them came searches for back and knee pain. A joke I've always liked is about some nuns at a school. In one room they have a bowl of apples and in another a bowl of sweets. By the apples there was a sign warning, "Take only one, Jesus is watching." By the bowl of sweets a student has left another sign, "Take as many as you like, Jesus is watching the apples." Jesus might not be watching us, but Big Brother definitely is. can we join together now in the fellowship of prayer? As we cautiously prepare to leave this latest chapter of our lives behind us, the world is slowly beginning to reawaken and reopen. May we find inspiration in the miracles of rebirth and new life going on all around us, and find courage to move on with our own life journeys, with open minds and open hearts to all the opportunities it may bring. We're going to have a short period of silence now for your own reflections. As always, we will remember those who may be known to us who are sick, the bereaved, or anyone who might be suffering at this time. And if you wish, I invite you to join with me in saying the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. The end is in sight. We're a step closer to moving out of the latest and hopefully final lockdown. This time tomorrow, most of the shops will be open again. If you feel the urge, you can go to the pub for a pint or a meal, although you will have to sit outside. And if you eat too much, you can go to the gym and burn it off again. They were interviewing people on the ITV News the other night and asking them what they were most looking forward to being able to do again. Forget the pub, shopping for clothes, or even chancing booking a holiday. It seems we're all just desperate to get a haircut. I can relate because I'm one gust of wind away from having to give a press conference in Downing Street. I've tried to get an appointment, but it looks like I've got a bit of a wait yet. One thing I have been doing a lot of with all this extra free time is reading. I'd love to say I've been ploughing my way through some great works of literature. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Dickens, the Brontes, but no. I'm addicted to trashy crime novels. I love a good murder, and even if it's mediocre, I'll probably read it anyway. I have tried to broaden my horizons, and so far I've made it all the way to true crime. This is going to be a slow process. I've just finished reading a series of books called the English Sean trilogy. It's a set of autobiographical books whereby a man called Sean Atwood from Cheshire tells the story of how he went to America after leaving university and became a stockbroker. He rapidly made huge amounts of money and led an increasingly luxurious and hedonistic lifestyle. Nothing wrong with that. It was all earned by legal means, even if arguably some of the morals were a bit questionable. But it sounds like it's a very cutthroat industry. I know little about it, so who am I to judge? You've probably already realised that this is not going to end well. Sean had already been using drugs while still living in England, and this escalated considerably to the point where his career was in jeopardy. Not that this was necessarily a problem, because he quickly found he could make much more money, far more easily, by smuggling and dealing in drugs than he could by any legal means. And he rapidly found himself leading what would later be described as an empire, involving hundreds of people, many of whom he never even met. And he slowly became more embroiled in all the kinds of criminality that you'd expect to go along with this kind of enterprise. Perhaps, inevitably, the authorities eventually caught up with Sean, and he found himself at the mercy of the American penal system. All of his assets were seized by the state, and he had to ask his devastated family back here in England to help with his very expensive legal bills. After a very torturous and lengthy legal process, which itself took well over a year, he was finally convicted and faced a lengthy sentence at a prison in Arizona. Sean talks extensively about his experiences in prison. He's sympathetic but very honest about both himself and some of his fellow prisoners. The picture he paints is of a very dangerous, volatile and hostile environment. He frequently witnessed appalling acts of violence. Given that much of this was drug-related, it's probably fair to say that he really did have to live with the consequences of his actions and saw up close some of the devastation his empire, and others like it, had wreaked on individuals, families and communities. Happily, this is a tale of redemption, and through sheer hard work and a lot of input from some different psychologists, Sean did completely turn his life around, and for a number of years now has devoted his life to being an advocate for those facing injustices within the prison and judiciary systems in a number of different countries. And he speaks extensively in schools to try and prevent people from ending up in prison in the first place. Now, you might think that after a number of years in such a brutal and harsh environment, and I should point out that he always was very clear that he was guilty of the crimes he was sentenced for and deserved and accepted the consequences, that he'd be at the gate, desperate for it to be opened when the day of release finally came. But this wasn't the case. If anything, the closer he came to release, the more anxious and worried he became. And I suppose it does make sense. Freedom, after having such a long period of life being so regimented and controlled, probably would seem a bit daunting. He'd formed close bonds with some of his fellow prisoners. The terms of his release, banning him from entering the US permanently, meant that he would probably never be able to see them again. His life had changed and would change again. But then the world had moved on too. Returning to the UK for the first time in 16 years, he would find a very different country to the one he'd left behind. So what does this have to do with us? I'll be surprised if any of you have a secret criminal empire waiting for a big scandal to emerge. I'll be completely honest. I have gone to Sainsbury's twice in the same day a few times. I did sneak into Solihull to go to Argos, and there may have been a cup of coffee that I actually didn't pay for the other day. I think the point is that although none of us have been physically locked up, at least as far as I know, we have had a taste of what it's like to lose some of our freedoms. Our travel has been restricted. We've been unable to visit the places we like to visit when we want to visit them. Even our chapel has had to close its doors for probably the first time in its history. Many of us have been isolated from family and friends for long periods of time. Our lives have changed, the world has changed, and now it's about to change again. Change is a fact of life. It's something we all have to accept and deal with. But that doesn't always mean that it's welcome or comfortable. It may well be that some of you are champing at the bit and anxious to get back out there and see what the new normal looks like. That's perfectly fine. But others may be more reticent, perhaps even a little nervous. I heard a man talking on the radio last week, and he was preparing to return to work after having been isolating at home for over 12 months due to a medical condition. Very understandably, in my opinion, he felt worried about this and did question how it was too unsafe for him to leave the house one day, and yet the next he could go back to work in a building full of other people. We all have a lot of questions that won't necessarily be answered, and we need to learn to live with them. If, like Sean, you've adapted to a different way of life and the prospect of another big change is daunting, that's fine too. We've all dealt with and adapted to living with lockdown in a variety of different ways. So it's only natural that we'll deal with coming out of it in a variety of different ways too. We have all had lots of time to think, contemplate and evaluate the world and our place in it. Perhaps this could be an opportunity to look at what we want from our lives and what, potentially, our society could look like in the future. Many of us have engaged more and drawn comfort from our spiritual lives. Sean talks extensively in his books about learning about philosophy and various religions, which helped him to understand why he did the things that he did and find strategies to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. He also became an avid practitioner of yoga. I've been to a few yoga classes. I was expecting to be really rubbish, but much to my surprise, I was far more rubbish than I thought I was going to be. After an incident which I can never go into, I left in shame. And when the instructor sent me an email asking if I'd return because I'd given them all such a good laugh, I knew I'd made the right decision. It's not for everyone. So, how will we make the move from lockdown back into something that feels a little more normal? I think it's back to our old friend, faith. We need to draw on our inner reserves of hope and courage and face up to that element of uncertainty. Now, this is going to be different for all of us, and we can only go at a pace that feels right. But one thing I know I've said many times, and I truly believe, is that we are all stronger than we think. With faith and the love and support of our family, our friends, and our community, I feel confident that we can put the past behind us. And I'm sure you'll all join with me in praying for a brighter, happier, and healthier future. Amen. Our time together is coming to a close, and as it was lit, our flame must be extinguished. But may its message of peace, hope, and unity remain with you all for the week ahead. Amen.